we are going to listen to a presentation, and it's an interactive activity. I sent out files and cards that Julie and Sharon are going to use in this presentation. And they're going to do some sort of a role play so everybody can participate in it as much as you wish, and really give this opportunity, look at this as an opportunity for you to take something back to your classes, and mainly the fellows. And the directors on the call are sort of the facilitators, if you would, are as to how to take information from this presentation, say, and help the fellows create a lesson plan or a learning activity or a learning experience to their students in their classrooms. And we do have a couple of announcements to make at the end of this presentation. And I also wanted to point out that the next coffee hour is on the 24th of April. And by that time, I hope that all of you would have figured out how to use your ID numbers and your cameras and all of those tech issues. And I'm happy to schedule one-on-one by-school tech check sessions if need be. So let me know, and I'm always here to help you with that. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Millikan University and give it to Julie and Sharon.
Thank you, Joe. I'm not going to be saying much except to introduce Julie. And the concept that we're going to be talking about today, which is the 5 practices of teaching entrepreneurship and why we use it and how we use it. We use it with our team, all caps, teaching entrepreneurship at Millikan. We work with our fellows from 3:30 to 5:30 every time we have a coffee cup. We bring them together later in the afternoon. We do some debriefs, and then our whole year this year has been the year of the classroom, and so everything that we have been doing is to try to help our fellows understand how to teach entrepreneurship and use it in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, because I know we're short on time, and I'm going to turn it over to Julie Shields, who will be sitting in my chair in July. And one of the things that she's going to be talking about is one of the exercises and the way that she uses the 5 practices of teaching entrepreneurship. Julie.
Great. Okay, now, Joe, you said that I might be in charge of the flipping of the slides. Is that correct?
Yeah, I will give you control of the meeting, and that way you can present your screen, Julie, okay. That way, and share your screen, and then you can advance the slides as much as, you can take as much as time as you need per slide, and then proceed with the presentation. Yeah.
A quick. This is slick. Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. Well, Sharon, probably I think we don't need to go over all of this, but just in case people are wondering a little bit about how long we've been teaching entrepreneurship and some of the different, I guess, practice things we've been doing over the years, this is part of it. So we've got quite a few different arts entrepreneurship courses, 7 different student-run ventures, other entrepreneurship courses in development, and then, of course, we have at least 12 years of history with arts entrepreneurship with music business going back even farther than that. So that just gives you a little bit of a framework of what we've been doing here at Millikan, but I know most of you know most of that already. So the crux or the main chunk of what I'm going to be talking about today is really from this book from Heidi Neck, Patricia Green, and Candida Brush called Teaching Entrepreneurship, a Practice-Based Approach. Highly recommend this. It has broad applicability. There is a the first 17 pages of this really get into a nice discussion about how entrepreneurship for many years has been taught via a process, and it's kind of the next evolution of this, is as many of us have been doing, it's more about the practice and different practice-based approaches to teaching entrepreneurship. But it's also a really good resource because it has 42 different classroom exercises that, and I'll just kind of call this out, they're great exercises, but many of them take longer than 50 minutes or 75 minutes. So one of the things that we're doing in our team meetings coming up later this month is looking at how might we modify some of the exercises to fit the time frame and the classroom spaces that we have. So that's just one of the things we're doing. Okay, so today's goals, just to give you an idea of what we're actually going to cover, I want to introduce a framework that's in the book. It's called the 5 Practices of Teaching Entrepreneurship. We can talk about that. You'll see that framework. We'll break it down a little bit. And the thing that I really like personally about the framework is that it helps me evaluate what I do in the classroom, what am I currently doing, and where are there gaps and holes that I might need to fill, and how might I need to reimagine my classroom. So it was a really great framework to use to do that. And the cool part is I am in control of my classroom, right? I'm in control of that, and that feeling of control is something that I wish for every faculty member to have on their own. And then we will have, Joe mentioned this role play. We will get to role play. However much you want to engage in that is totally fine, but I've twisted the arms of my colleagues here in the room to help with the role play. Okay, so this is the framework of the 5 practices: practice of play, practice of empathy, creation, experimentation, and reflection. And this starts everything from getting, I like to start with the practice of play, as the book does, because it gets students into a framework where they're more open, their brains and intellects are more open to some of the concepts, and all the way through to experimentation, actually getting into the action of starting a business or starting an entrepreneurial endeavor. And throughout the middle is this reflective process, because we learn, have deep learning through the act of reflecting. The 8 behaviors of entrepreneurs. So this is how we kind of measure if what we're doing with the 5 practices is actually making any difference.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Can you set the context for us here? So this is all information that you can present, but how do you use it? Do you use it in your intro to entrepreneurship classroom? Do you use it in your workshops for the student businesses? How do you use it?
It's applicable everywhere, and different people use it in different ways.
And our fellows are using it. That's what we're trying to share with you, is that all of our fellows are using many of these same concepts.
So fellows are teaching arts and science. Some of the
yes.
where are they finding the most effectiveness in using this?
Well,
in your estimation.
Well, I think the most effectiveness is actually in informing their teaching and informing the experience that their students are having in the classroom. We use it in, the student-run ventures are actually part of the practice of experimentation. So that's how, when you think about what you're doing in the classroom, that's one piece, and blow it up, and from a macro level, a university or institution can look at it from how are we doing this holistically around our entrepreneurship endeavors. So a Coleman director, for example, might look at what they're doing on campus and say, we've got a lot of great stuff with practice of play or creation, but maybe we need to focus on empathy and experimentation. That's from a macro level. And then, but within a classroom level, you can do all of those same things just on a different scale, relevant to their own discipline. So an experiment in science might be a completely different experiment than in art.
Okay, perfect. And so this applies to not only teaching in the arts, it applies to teaching in sciences, engineering, across the board.
And across the board, yeah. Entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial mindset can take place anywhere, and that's kind of the point. So, yep, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Even
right.
theater, you said, Sarah?
Yeah. Julie, I was using some of the things out of that.
Yeah, some of the reflexive pieces. So.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So these are the 8 behaviors that just across the board we're trying to, and this is at Millikan, these are the 8 behaviors we're trying to impact with regards to how we teach entrepreneurship. So I just wanted to throw these up there because a different institution might be looking at completely different things, but these are the 8 that
and we measure them.
That we identified that we measure. We do pre and post tests. So, okay, get back. Here's the framework again, just to get your minds back around this framework. And we're going to go piece by piece for each practice. I've thrown some ideas up there for different exercises, but what I'd actually like to talk about, because I don't just want to read the slide, is some of the philosophy behind it, and this is, again, all in the Teaching Entrepreneurship book, so it's a quick snapshot of what's in that book. The big thing with the practice of play is that play is something we usually consider something that children do, but it's really important for the adult mind as well, and think of it less from a game perspective. Games are easy ways to think about play, but a lot of people get hung up on the word game. But games are a good way to do abstract models, to realize things. They're typically very quantified, and games are a good way to absorb things into the unconscious. So if you want concepts and ideas of entrepreneurial mindset, how to engage people into action, games are good ways to do that. And the practice of play is really, how do you get students to think about getting into that flow? I think we've all been at places where we lose track of time, completely lose track of time, because we are so engaged in what we're doing. For children, it's, on a playground, right? You have to drag them away from it because they're really interested in, swinging one more time. And think about if you could get your students to feel that way about being in class with you. I think that's really cool. And again, because we're talking about the classroom experience. If they didn't want to leave because they were enjoying themselves so much, or, oh, it's not 1:50 and I need to get to a 2 o'clock class, that's the kind of feeling that this practice of play really focuses on. So it's that kind of flow of losing track of time. There's a couple different examples of here. Making It Rain is a theater type of activity. Creationary is something that's actually from Jeff Stamp, where you have a newspaper or any kind of publication, you pick out fun words, break them into their syllables, and have the students mix them up in different ways and come up with a new word. And so that's kind of one of those opening their minds standpoint. So just a couple of those. Do I have any questions about practice of play from anybody? I love crickets. Cricket. I should have a little cricket button here. But
we should. Sound effect.
But the big thing about practice of play is a lot of times, because we're adults, we forget that this is an important way to set the mental classroom for people, because you want to get into their minds, and the practice of play is a great way to get students to open up their mind and be ready to learn and be ready to engage in the act of learning.
So, Julie, I have a question for you. So when you start your class, do you introduce this at the very opening of the session, or if it's a, let's say, 15-week course, do you use it in the first couple of weeks, or, do you when do you introduce this in your syllabus?
Sure. Well, actually, this isn't something that I introduce in a syllabus. It's part of how I intentionally create the environment that I have in my classroom. So it might be very relevant to have at the beginning of a semester, because you're trying to frame that this is a different kind of class or a different kind of experience that they're going to have. But I would never say this is something that you have to start everything with. That's just, every situation is different. I think it's appropriate when you're trying to set a mental stage for a new kind of learning or a new concept. I think this is a good way to do that. But it's not something you have to start every class off with. It's not something that is a requirement. It's just a consideration to use intentionally when it's appropriate in your classroom.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The practice of empathy. Interestingly enough, in the book, it talks about how empathy and the study of empathy is something that's really only about 100 years old, and only has a lot of interesting work from a research basis been done over the past 20 years or so. And empathy is very important when it comes to entrepreneurship, because we have to create value for other people, right? Creating value for ourselves is easy because we know ourselves, but creating value for others means that you have to get in their heads a little bit. So there's a couple different types of categories, if you will, of empathy. There is direct research or observation. This is something that probably appeals to the scientific folks in the webinar classroom that we have here. Communication, so storytelling and personas, as well as ideation and role play. So those are three different categories, if you will, of empathy. And it's really important from the standpoint of connecting with others, helping students understand how to network, solving a problem, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to do, is solve a problem. And in order to do that, you have to understand the problem. And then what does it be to be an entrepreneur? So here's some activities up there, but some things that people are probably already doing that fits into this practice of empathy is inviting entrepreneurs into the classroom to tell their stories, right? I think that a lot of people already do that, or they bring people in to talk about. That's an excellent example of how to engage your students in this practice of empathy. Design thinking is an excellent thing as well that many people have included into their syllabi, and that too, it talks about you have to think about your customer, think about who's actually taking advantage of your value proposition. And critical thinking, solving problem, any of those type of activities are very relevant to this practice of empathy. Any questions about the practice of empathy?
Is there anyone from any of the campuses using this particular model already in their schools?
I am. This is Paul here. I use the book in my graduate class on entrepreneurship.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Okay, and do you use it in the similar fashion?
I structure it a little bit differently given my students and, but it's a great framework to use to structure a class, to segment a learning goal.
This is Jerry. We also use it, we actually take it off of the Osterwalder book, and it's one of the techniques we use to try and, we use the empathy map to get students to visualize their customer. Literally, they have to come up with a customer story based on that. So that's a good way to make the customer a lot more concrete.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. The clipboard listening.
Hold on, Julie. Georgianne has a comment or a question.
Yeah, just the same comment. We use the empathy map in our Lean Launchpad class that we do about a week on that, and then the customer archetype, and then we use it in our entrepreneurship class as well. And then when we teach it in the theater classes, I think they try to use the empathy map of who they're going to go for auditions and things like that to try to understand who they're auditioning to.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. And just so that we're clear, the empathy map is one example of something that can be used to reinforce this practice of empathy. So if it's something that doesn't work for a specific situation, that's totally fine. There's other ways and other tools that you can use within a classroom space to do that. I will say that we used to use the empathy map, and sometimes I pull it out and use it again. But I actually have students now go out and do customer interviews and then reflect back on those customer interviews as a little different way, more active way of trying to figure out empathy with a customer segment. So, but
we have a question or a comment from ISU.
Yeah.
I get the big picture. I'm just really intrigued with this, and I understand that we have to get in their heads to understand and develop a product or a service that they might be interested in purchasing from us. What I don't quite get is how we utilize the metric that you have up there, the little smiley face. Can you give me some very direct feedback on that? I mean, let's say we're developing a product. How do we use that?
Yeah. So I don't know that I'm not an expert specifically on that empathy map. That is, like I said, it's a tool that can be used. But the smiley face on there is really just a visual design that Osterwalder and Pigneur use to demonstrate that there's a human being at the middle of all of this.
Julie, we have comments from Frank from WPI and also Colorado Mesa. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you very much.
Joe, this is Clark at WPI, and the point I want to make is that those of you that have colleagues in anthropology, there's a discipline within anthropology, an approach around ethnography. And ethnography is an approach within anthropology that is very commonplace, and it's all around getting inside the individual. And so it might be a way to kind of advance this type of concept in your campus team by exploring your colleagues in anthropology and using ethnography as a vehicle to engage in the practice of empathy. So we do have some fellows in anthropology historically that actually have found this connection and found it really interesting to use teaching of ethnography, help students learn how to do an ethnography as a vehicle to practice empathy.
Beautiful. Yes, definitely.
Joe?
Okay, Georgianne, go ahead, Georgianne.
I have a question. This is Gina Betty from WPI. When the students go out and they're talking with customers to get into the customer's head, is there a tool that you help them put a script together for in terms of an interview? Because I imagine that might be a stumbling block for some of them. What do I ask the customer?
Absolutely. And actually what I've had some success with is it's a guy by the name of Justin Wilcox from Customer Dev Labs in San Francisco, I believe. And he's got YouTube videos that kind of walk through some of the language. And he also, there's some very specific things that we tell the students not to do. Like, you are not to sell your product. You're not to use the word would, and would you buy this, or would you be interested in this, because it's solely about listening and about asking probing questions, but not about selling the product itself. And that's also an interesting hurdle for students to get through, because they come up with this idea and they want to sell it, and it's like, no, you have to have some idea of what you're going to be asking about, but you have to ask probing questions to find out if what you're doing is an iterative process. The other thing that we use is a book from Diana Kander, All in Startup, and that's also a good resource to help students understand this concept of listening to the customer and it being an iterative process, and there's a lot of cognitive churning, if you will, around that idea. So those are two other resources that we use. But yeah, Justin Wilcox is the guy who has the scripting. Great question.
Okay, thank you, Julie. We have a question or a comment from Lawrence Tech.
Yeah, hi, this is Karen and Don. And one of the things that we do to help students get around that block where they just want to ask about their product directly is to remind them that quote attributed to Henry Ford, if I had asked people what they wanted me to make, I would have been told to build a faster horse.
Right.
Ask people what they want, they don't know, or they'll only suggest incremental changes. So it's those probing questions, like you mentioned, that really got people giving you the answers that you need without them even realizing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Joe?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, great. And then Georgianne, I'm sorry, you had your hand up too. Yes.
I was trying to be nice. Next month, I'm going to be talking about the Lean Launchpad, and all the questions you're asking is basically what the Lean Launchpad does. It takes the canvas, and the students go around and ask those probing questions. It's the whole process of that. So a lot of these questions will be answered next month when we go through that whole Lean Launchpad process.
Perfect.
Yes, good way to promote your session. Yes, next coffee hour, it's Georgianne doing what Julie's doing today. So great, Georgianne, I like that. Thank you. IIT, Heather, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, that's really great about the Lean Launchpad thing. And Libby,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm looking in like a mirror, yeah, I know you're sitting on my left, I should know that. She's actually, this is her project as well, and so I don't know, maybe if there's some collaboration that we could figure out offline so that call is even more high impact for the two projects, that'd be really cool.
Great, and if you want to connect with any of the fellows in the community of practice, you have the capability to do that through the website. You sign into the website, log in, and go to search users or fellows. And if you click on their name, it'll take you to a screen where you can send them emails, send them a file. So there is a lot of ways to connect with the fellows, and that's one of the hopes that we have for the community of practice, so that you can create this synergies amongst yourselves. So that's great. So let's go back to Julie. I'm sorry, Julie. There are a lot of questions, which is kind of good. So go ahead, Julie.
I know. I love it. Feel free to jump in. I think it's fantastic. The next practice in the model is the practice of creation. And this is juxtaposed to this the concept of a process, if you will, right? So we're very used to the process and predictive measures and planning, and this kind of gets back to that business model. We all have the big business pitch at the end of the semester. Not we all do, but that's kind of traditionally how it's been done. And this is really saying, you know, that's all good and fine, but creation itself is different. It's not a straight line process. And you start with what you have, with the resources that you have on hand, the skills that you have on hand, and you're looking at what some of the needs are, and you have multiple outcomes potentially. And interestingly enough, one of the things written in that they quote in the book is that only 25% of people feel creative. But in reality, we all have that potential within us. So how do we create that environment in our classroom, again, where people feel comfortable and free of fear, free of all of these other things to practice creation. And this is where the role play is going to kick in. So you can either watch us, or if you printed out cards, you can play along at home. One of the exercises that we use in a number of our classrooms here is called the exercise in ridiculosity. And we use it for a specific purpose, and that is to actually, we use it with the business model Canvas, which many of you use, but it can really be used with any kind of tool where you're trying to articulate a new business idea, okay? Because the purpose of it is to expose people to the model without having them getting stuck on other things. So I came up with 120, which is a ridiculous number, but there's no magic number. It's just because there were 60 people in the group that I was working with, of just random resources, situations, or skills. And I made a card deck out of them, and they're things like you write short stories, or old cardboard boxes, or thousands of old postcards. So literally ridiculous things, right? Not that you're not writing short stories, are ridiculous. I'm looking at my colleague from the English department saying, that's not ridiculous. But, and what they do, what the students do, I'm going to do this, I'm going to role play this. I do have to stand up, actually. I have them just choose 2 random cards, or, you know, for this purpose, let's go ahead and pick 3, because we're dealing with adults, and adults like voice and choice.
And this is what you do with your students, right, Julie?
This is exactly what I do with the students. Absolutely. And they have no idea what they're getting into. I don't say, okay, we're learning the business model today. They have no idea what's coming at them. Yes, and if everybody wants, I can send you your own deck of cards with the Milliken logo on the back. I know that's very important to everybody. Okay, so they will get, could we just go around the room and read off the 3 things that you got from my colleagues here?
I don't know if I'm on camera or not. I have lots of old cracked plates. My second card is, your friends and you are theater performers. And the third one, you like helping people.
Awesome. This is usually right around the point where all of the students start cracking up, laughing at each other.
Groaning.
Or groaning.
Yeah, one.
Old cardboard boxes, cupcake tins, 20 old large wood picture frames.
Awesome.
I have 100 old half-burned candles, 10 5-gallon water jugs, and 200 old cars.
And I have giant bin of coins. You can dance really well.
Yeah.
200 brown paper lunch sacks.
All right. So you see how the potential for ridiculosity is ripe, right? It's just right here in front of us. We're not going to go through all of you guys actually having to create your own new product or service. But that's the challenge that I give everybody is, okay, you've got 15 minutes. Here is your model, okay? And I don't give them much more other than that. I mean, they're college students. Like, think about what your value proposition is, what's your new product or new service, and who are you selling it to, okay? So we're talking about value proposition and your customer segments, and those are the 2 that they typically start with, and they start filling that out. If they really get stuck and they're kind of looking around going, how do I even do this? Most of them are not that way. Most of them engage readily in this. They understand that this is stupid, right? It's crazy. It's ridiculous. But I threw out the idea of one student got old bologna and Frisbees, and they were supposed to come up with an idea with that. and they came up with dog treats for lazy dogs and their lazy owners. Right, that was what they came up with, and there's some brilliance to that in a couple different ways, because what's one of the challenges that many of us have when we think about, or when our students are coming to us with a business idea, and we ask them what customers are going to be interested in this. They say, all women 18 to 85, right? I think that happens quite a bit, and having a ridiculous idea can help you talk about this concept of really thinking critically about your market segments for your particular business. Oh, sorry. Here we go.
So Julie,
yeah.
Excuse me.
No,
let's go back to the question that Mark brought up for a second.
Yeah.
Mark, can you repeat the question you mentioned to Julie?
Well, I think the question got answered a little bit, and I think I asked it poorly, but I was looking for application, and as time went on, I think I understand now how the application takes place. I just love the idea of empathy and understanding what a client or a potential customer can do, and I was looking for very concrete examples of how we would use this, and y'all launched in almost immediately with we make sure that the students know not to ask the question, would you buy this, or how would you buy this, and I began to get a really good feel for what we were talking about.
Good.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got that connected. Okay. Great. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, I was going to say, Joe, one of the things that you've asked me before is when in a semester do we do something like this, right? And
yes.
Whenever is appropriate is a good answer to that, but I would say that we start off pretty early with introducing them to the model, and I don't give a big lecture about the model and then jump into this. I jump right into this. They don't really know what they're doing because it's that experience of struggling with, well, what is a customer relationship, or what do you mean by channels? Those are all things that we can talk about after we have some concrete ideas in our minds of what we're talking about. I personally like using something ridiculous like this to talk about a model, a new model, and getting them used to it, because the emphasis comes off of what ideas they have in their brains about their business idea. They get very attached to those ideas, and then they stop asking critical questions. When we talk about ridiculous things, it's on the model, and we can really use some rich discussion about the model itself and how it works.
Yeah,
so anyway.
and Julie, another context here, I think, also is this is for undergraduates, correct? This class is primarily undergrads.
Oh, yeah, the one I teach, yes, absolutely. But I've also used this with middle school students and high school students. I just haven't had the opportunity to use it with graduate students, but yeah.
Joe, can I just interject here? The class that she teaches lots of things, but the class in particular that she teaches is a multidisciplinary class. So there are business students in it, there are art students in it, there are music students in it, there are science students in it. So it's this is a way to, and she's done a very good job of trying to bring everything together so they can experience and have some commonality and understanding when they go through this. So I just wanted to add that.
Perfect. And Julie, it's a great way to introduce a business model. If you talk about business model to artists, their eyes glaze over, and 20 seconds you lost them. If you ask them to pick a card and then, start it that way, they can relate to it much better. So great. So proceed.
Let me see. Sorry, let me get back to this. Oh, the main point of the practice of creation, and there's a really great line in here, is that with entrepreneurship, it's not so much climbing the mountain as it is building mountains, right? We have to build on this. There's a lot of, I guess, the rocks and, dirt and all those type of things. And creation is really that way. It's very dirty and very messy, and there's not a path through it. I mean, and this is part of that concept, again, of what you want to create potentially within your classrooms is this practice of creation where there's a lot of dirt and mud. And anyway.
Great. We have a few more questions or comments. IIT, go ahead.
Sorry, I think I accidentally hit the wrong thing. You don't have a question or
Okay,
comment?
go ahead. Then UNCG.
Yes, Julie, this is Donna Duffy from UNCG, and I don't want to interrupt your presentation, but I have to say that, well, first, thank you, because I know that you still have one slide to go through. The practice of experimentation, I think, is next. But,
2 more, but yeah, that's okay.
2 more, sorry. Okay, so I'm a new Coleman Fellow, and I have been for the past year reading about all of these different business models, which, you know, is kind of Greek to me in some ways because I've never done this before. And this model, the way that you're explaining this, makes so much sense. And I really think that this is my starting point now when I actually teach my class. So you're only halfway through, but I wanted to say thank you because a light bulb just went off, and now I know what to do. I know what direction to move in, where I really feel like I've been struggling with that for about 6 months.
And Donna, what do you teach?
Well, I'm in the Department of Kinesiology. Well, I have a joint position at UNCG, but I am going to implement these entrepreneurial learning objectives with my sport coaching students.
Excellent.
So coaches starting their own business, and I really like the way that this model has been presented. I've not seen this model yet in the different text and articles that I've read over the past 6 months, and there's just something about the way that this is being presented that just makes so much sense to me, more so than any other model has so far. So this is, I just like it.
Great.
Great, great.
You,
we have another comment or question from Kevin from Elon University.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Julie, this is a really interesting idea you have here. I'm just wondering, have you ever thought about using it where you had these categories? So you had somebody like to dance, another one had the bologna sandwich, another one had maybe a target market, women over 84 or something like that, where they pick one from each and design.
Oh, I love that idea.
Around. I didn't know if that'd be something you do later or something you do earlier. Just curious.
I love that idea. I haven't thought about that. That could maybe be Ridiculosity 2.0. I think that's fantastic. But yeah, that's one of the things I like to do when I talk with, professors and educators is think about, now, how would you do this differently? How do you see this fitting within your classroom? Because it's just a concept. The actual execution of it could be done any number of different ways. And so I love hearing ideas from you guys. So feel free to shoot ideas back to me too, because I could use them in my classroom as well.
Yeah, Tony and I over here from Elon, we're already putting cards together with Elon logos on the back. So.
Good for you. Good for you.
Of course you are, Kevin. Of course you are.
Good for you, Kevin. That's awesome.
Spoken like an entrepreneur. Go ahead. Go ahead, Julie. You're back on.
Donna, I just wanted to respond to Donna a little bit too, in that when I saw this model presented at USASB a year ago, January, that same light bulb that you kind of experienced, that's what went off in my mind too. I'm like, yes, this fits not only how I believe entrepreneurship, how I can teach entrepreneurship. Let me put it that way, how I can teach entrepreneurship. So anyway, I just wanted to say, yeah, I feel you there. So cool. Okay, practice of experimentation. This is really the learning by doing, and this is where at Millikan it fits in really nicely because we have this mantra of performance learning. That's kind of how we do things. And so at Millikan, this practice of experimentation resonates with our laboratories, student-run ventures, but this could be done within a classroom without all of that other trapping. So you can do marble challenges, different personal selling experiences, but the big thing here is how do you help students increase their competency, okay, within their discipline, within entrepreneurship, while reducing uncertainty. And those are two big things there, because you want them to practice something and fail a little bit, right, and then learn from that, because entrepreneurs aren't all about risking everything. They're about reducing uncertainty and reducing that risk by little tests out in the marketplace. And so figuring out how you can create an environment within your classroom or with what you're doing within your discipline to help them fail a little bit consistently, regularly, and reflect and learn from that. So that's really the big thing here. And this is where, again, from the director position at a macro level, how do you encourage this ecosystem within your institution? So you might need some more institutional help with this particular one. Any questions about experimentation? This is really good if you actually are a scientist and have a laboratory, because you do get to blow things up. So. Okay, I would just put in there on the slide, it talks about a degree of trust in their instructor. I do think it's important to not just always throw students into a situation where there is no support or help. I mean, it does need to be some level and degree of trust, I believe, in the instructor, in the process of the learning environment before being thrown into a market test situation. So that's that part. And then what ties it, the glue that ties all of this together, is the practice of reflection, because reflection is what dominates this concept of deep learning. And it's not a straight line, so you have to, it's almost like a delving down into the core of what the student is. In order to see the connection between what they're doing in the classroom or what they're doing in the student-run venture and what they can do and are able to do in their future lives, is all, revolves around this practice of reflection. One thing I love about the Teaching Entrepreneurship book, if any of you have questions about, well, what kind of reflection can I do, there's a great summary within this book about 6 different kinds of reflections: the narrative, the emotional, percipient, analytical. I have to write these down, by the way. Analytical, evaluative, and critical. And it goes into examples of each of these things. And this is something I absolutely do every class period. We always have a reflection in every class period. It might be small or it might be larger, but this is something that we do. I don't know.
And Julie, all the notes and the books that you are referring to as you're speaking, is it in a document somewhere that you can share with us?
Yes.
So
yeah, it is that book. They do all the research, and it's all in there.
Okay.
That one right there. Joe, we've put, I don't know if we got it done yesterday or not, but we've put on the fellow site our behavior and attitudinal assessment, and then our rubrics for beginning, competence, mastery. So we think that will help. And then we're also citing a paper that was in the JSBM prior to this book about 4 or 5 years ago with Green and Heidi on Known Worlds and New Frontiers. And that's where they talk about the methods versus, here's the plan and the process. So, and that really resonated with us, and we really made our whole entrepreneurship pathway based on that, and this book is the evolution of that, and it's really resonated well with our fellows, and it's really resonated in helping them develop their new courses, and we'll use it with our new fellows when they come in as well.
Okay, I have a question via chat from Jerry. He says Julie, you talked about Cander's book and the ethnographic website, or I think Clark mentioned ethnography. Are there books or papers or articles that you refer to for that?
For ethnography? You mean the ethnographer Bruton's work, or are you talking about ethnography? There's two different, I guess I wanted to understand what you're talking about. I think Clark was talking about ethnography, right?
Right. Yeah, Jerry, can you explain your chat? I may have misread or misunderstand your chat item here.
Sure. Basically, when you were talking about, you mentioned Kendra's book, All in Startup. You were also talking about someone on the West Coast who had a site that you were using for building the ethnographic pieces. And I know those aren't in Heidi's book.
Right. No, that's true. it's not so much ethnographic things, but it's Justin Wilcox, and it's Customer Dev Labs is his business over there, his consulting firm that does that. And I can post that information of how to get in touch with Justin as well.
And we've had him here. We've had him here on campus. We've had Bruton here. This is, although we love this text and we love Heidi and it's not the only one we use. We use everything that we can do to possibly bring into the classroom. And we do crosswalk what she's talking about here with Lean. We use Lean in a lot of, especially in our major courses. So, and I think you can see the relationship with that. And I think Georgianne commented on that.
I would probably also explain that a lot of the exercises that are on the slides are not exercises that are in this book. So I use different things for, you can read the book and get that information. Those are just examples of other kind of exercises you can use, the ones that are on the screen. So thank you. Excellent clarification. Anything else on reflection?
Let me
I'm moving on.
The ones that are on the screen but not in Heidi's book, I think folks will you be posting those to the Fellows website?
We can, yes. And actually some of them are from other fellows or former fellows. The clipboard one is from TCU, and I think that's one of the awesome things about this, and I'm not sure how to go about it, but I think that we all do some excellent exercises within our classrooms. And one of the things that we did at the last summit was ask everybody who was in the presentation to share some of the exercises that you do in each of these practices. What was shared at that, we typed all of that up and posted it back to the Coleman website. So there's a bunch of that stuff there too. So there's a lot of different ways that we can get this information. But it wouldn't hurt to all have it in one place, right? If you're like me, you're pretty busy and crazy. So maybe that's something that I can talk with Joe about, figuring out a way to put that in maybe its own separate little thing.
Yeah, and Julie, we can talk offline about how to make that happen on the site.
Awesome.
And put all this in and you probably have some syllabi as well, so we can post all those things and we can go through that. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Perfect way to promote the site. I thank you for that, both you and Jerry.
Awesome. So the final part of this, I think it's the final. We're really close to final, if not the final, because we've got like 6 minutes left. The big thing is how I use this five practice model is I look at what exercises I do, how I ask myself how do they fit into the framework, and then what are the gaps, and then I go out and try to look for things that fill the gaps. And that to me isn't something where I'm looking at each time, each class period, but I'm looking for a whole experience that fits all of these things. So, and I think it's a really powerful tool for instructors and educators to look at what they do and ask themselves some tough questions about how they do it. So that's it, I think. There it is.
Okay, great. Are there any other comments or questions for Julie? Yes, there is a few of them. Let's see. I'm trying to sequence them here. IIT, go ahead.
I haven't even gone near my computer. I don't know what's going on.
Okay,
I'm literally like, I don't know.
Okay, then is there a question from Lawrence Tech or a comment from Lawrence Tech? Because I see them with the hands raised.
That may have been stuck up from earlier.
From the past one, okay. Okay, great. If there are no other questions or comments, I do want to encourage everyone to connect with each other through the website. It is not difficult to do. It just takes maybe a couple more minutes for you to spend time on the site, and so you can find all of the fellows in the current cohort of this academic year on the website. They have you have their email, you have their phone number, and usually I would recommend that you start with the email and share your thoughts and ideas. And Julie mentioned something that I think is critical. What makes our community of practice very powerful and successful is that so many of us are doing some really, really cool things in how we infuse entrepreneurship in our classrooms, and we have the directors who are there as the sort of the gatekeepers of knowledge and information about how all this flows into the classrooms for the various fellows. But some of the things that you can share with each other, I think, is equally powerful or even more powerful, because not all the directors teach in all of the disciplines. So if somebody is teaching in the art, somebody is teaching theater or dance, and I am repeating things that you heard a million times, but I keep repeating them because I would love to engage the fellow site into this as a asynchronous opportunity for us to connect with ideas, connect with each other, and make this experience better for the sake of the students, because at the end of the day, it is about the students that we all touch as faculty. So with that, I would like to remind everybody that the next coffee hour I want to promote. Georgianne, maybe you can talk about what you're going to do on the 24th, briefly, if you can.
Yeah, interpretive dance is what they said, but I won't do that, okay? I'm a great tap dancer, but I'm not going to do that. I teach a Lean Launchpad class. I went to Santa Clara in November and got trained on the Lean Launchpad method. And what I will try to do is overlay it on what they've built so far, because it fits into each one of those modules. So I'll show how you take the business model canvas and you add the value proposition canvas. You know, you really ask the questions, and that's basically what that class is each of the 9 building blocks. The students have to go out and ask the questions. So I'll show you how we do it. I mean, it's kind of messy, but it works out. And I have one class that combines engineering, computer science, and business, and kinesiology is who I have in there now. And it's been a great mix. They come up with some cool businesses, and then they have to do the storytelling of what they've learned and how the business has evolved. So that's what I'm going to talk about.
And great. And Heather, you, if Libby wanted to chime in with Georgianne, please. I can introduce, if you haven't met Georgianne already, I can introduce you by email, and hopefully you can present together if you wish. But whatever works, the idea is to bring us together as a community of practice. So that's great. So that's going to happen on the 24th of April. Oh, you had a question?
I said that connection would be great, and we'll see where we can dovetail.
Great. We'll be happy to do that. I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. So that will happen on the 24th at 10 a.m. Chicago time, and I'll send out the presentation deck and other documentation for that from Georgianne. And the last coffee hour for the year is on the 22nd of May, and that's for the directors only. And we look forward to seeing all of you and connecting with all of you on the 24th for the whole community. And I am here for any school that wants to do a tech check. There are some cameras that work better for the coffee hours than others, and it's not very expensive. Some of the Logitech cameras you can buy for $50, $60. You can zoom in and out, so you have a group of 15, 10 people, 12 people, whatever that number is. 5 people are on the table. You can capture everybody sitting together as a group of faculty engaged and thinking about struggling with how to teach entrepreneurship to our students. So if you are in need of any assistance in that area or in doing that, please email me. I can set up a separate conversation for us through WebEx and make that happen. So are there any other comments or questions from anybody on the call? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to end the meeting in a couple of minutes. And the recording, every coffee hour is recorded, so the recordings usually go up to the fellows channel. And some of you said, where is the fellows channel? And I wanted to show us that. So this is the fellows website. And as you can see, the menu on the top, there's a videos menu. Click on videos. And there it is. That's the fellows channel. And Anybody can add to this, and if you have a specific video from your campus or instructional video, whatever that may be, post it on YouTube and send me the link, and I'll add it to the channel. And it's a great way to connect with others asynchronously. And so, as you can see, we have the January, February, and the March Coffee Hour will be posted. And the previous Coffee Hours from last year are posted to the playlists. And all the playlists can show you, take a minute and take a look at this. I do spend a lot of time and effort in putting this together, and I hope that all of you would use it for the benefit of our students. So if there are no other comments or questions, it is 11:02. I'm going to end the call. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend, and we will see all of you online on the 24th of April at 10 a.m. Thank you.